Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome tonight's Master of Ceremonies. He's an 11-time Georgia Sportscaster of the Year, the radio play-by-play voice of the Atlanta Falcons, and television voice of Atlantic Coast Conference football, basketball, and baseball. Please welcome Wes Durham.
Good evening. Welcome to Winston-Salem and the Joel Coliseum for the 60th Annual National Sports Media Association Awards Program. It's a great night of celebration of success. It's a chance for us to honor our history, be excited about our future, and along the way renew ties with old friends and make new ones in this ever-evolving and ever-rewarding industry that we have chosen as a profession. You have a little bit of information on your table tonight about the history of the National Sports Media Association. Many of you have seen our awards program. You know tonight that we'll induct the 110th, 111th, 112th, and 113th members of the NSMA Hall of Fame. Along that, we'll honor a record number of state sports writers and sportscasters that have chosen to join us here tonight in Winston-Salem. And for that, we are very grateful to have all of you in attendance. Ryan Mcgee was the Master of Ceremonies at this event last year. Ryan is on assignment at the College World Series in Omaha. He is a fellow board member like myself. We're represented by the same agent, so therefore I will not be offering any derogatory comments about Mr. Mcgee's absence while he drinks beer in Omaha, Nebraska at the College World Series. You can look for yourself on his social media. This organization is near and dear to me. I've been blessed to be an award winner, and now I'm blessed to be a member of the board. This organization and this night in particular might have changed my career in 1987 as a rising senior at Mighty Elon. And by law, I have to say Mighty Elon because they were nice enough to give me a degree. In 1987, at the auditorium on the campus of Catawba College in Salisbury, North Carolina, my dad was winning the North Carolina Sportscaster of the Year and invited me down to come to this very awards program. And in the span of 35 minutes, I met Jim McKay, Frank DeFord, Will Grimsley, and Al Michaels, who told me to be an accountant. Should have listened to Al, at least a couple days in my career. On your table tonight, under your napkin, you're going to see a pledge card. The same passion for this organization that has lasted 60 years is the one that I have. Many of you tonight are first-time winners. Some of you are second, third, fourth, or in the case of my great friend Don Fisher of Indiana, 26 times the Indiana Sportscaster of the Year. I, along with a very, very superlative group of board members, have steered this organization in the last few years. These people here in Winston-Salem and some of our national board have done just a tremendous job as we move this organization into the 21st century on so many different levels, and trying to not only respect the history, honor the present, but also engage young people who want the same careers that we've been so blessed to have. So tonight, I hope before you leave or sometime on your way home, I hope you'll consider making a donation so that others get to enjoy the same kind of weekend and the same kind of hospitality hopefully you've enjoyed here. In the middle of each table is a red passion envelope with a couple of pens. We hope you'll fill out those cards, put them back in those envelopes, and we thank you so much for your consideration. About 3 weeks ago, we lost an Alabama Sportscaster of the Year in a tragic accident in Auburn, Alabama. And before we get to tonight's national anthem, I'm going to ask you to join me in a moment of silence for the great voice of the Auburn Tigers, Rod Bramlett. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Frank Thomas, who will perform tonight's national anthem.
What, y'all not gonna stand? Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, oh, the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave over the land of the free and the home of the brave.
In a few moments, dinner's going to be served. Much like it was when Pete DiMizio invited everybody to his Italian restaurant in Salisbury when this organization was born, or as we like to say in this part of the world, his Italian restaurant. But as I promised Dave Gorin and Ryan Mcgee, this will be express lane emceeing tonight, folks. 8 items or less, I promise you. So enjoy dinner, and we'll be back with you shortly to get our program underway. Thank you again for being here tonight.
Once again, our MC, West Durham.
Before we get to the awards portion of the program tonight, a couple of folks that want to say hello. And first of all, it's my pleasure to introduce the mayor of Winston-Salem, who announced 2 weeks ago that he's running for re-election in 2020. Please welcome the Honorable Alan Joines.
Wes, with that voice, I'm going to let you be on the campaign trail with me. Good evening, everyone. It's always a wonderful pleasure for me to be here to welcome you to our city and to thank you for what you mean to our country and the excitement that you bring all across the country and to your own communities and the work that you do here. Winston-Salem is a city, our motto is a city of the arts and innovation, and we don't take that lightly. We had the first arts council in the country formed here in 1949, and then we have the innovation that goes along with that, with some of the most cutting-edge research going on right here in Winston-Salem. We're a city of about 250,000 people in a metro area of 1.6, and we're pushing forward and really had to change our economy and our mix based it on knowledge-based companies. But we're proud to be hosting this tonight. And Dave, we congratulate you and your hard work and your whole board of directors who make this happen. I hope your stay in Winston is wonderful and enjoyable. If there's anything I can do to make your stay any better, just let me know. But thanks for being here, and congratulations to all the award winners tonight.
Mayor, I'm moving to Charlotte. I can't vote here. I'm sorry. Next up, the president of the Chamber of Commerce in Winston-Salem, and we have the good fortune of having him as one of our NSMA board members. Please welcome Mark Owens.
Good evening, Winston-Salem. We're so thrilled to have you here again, right here in the beautiful Joel Coliseum, filled up, and it's an amazing honor to speak in front of some of the people that I call just heroes and legends as a huge sports fan and former athlete, emphasis on the former. I appreciate you on behalf of Visit Winston-Salem. Thank you for being here, where we look forward and we travel back, and it's so nice to see many of you here again for your stay in beautiful Winston-Salem. I would like to say on behalf of our board, our wonderful board chair, Ms. Diane Blix, we are honored to have all of you here as well. And we'd like to just pause for a second and give Mr. Dave Gorin a round of applause for all the work he does. We appreciate your support as a board member and as a community. And I just want to tell you also as a fan that your stories that you tell on TV connect families. And the stories that I remember are sitting around a radio or a TV with my grandfather and listening to some of the voices that are in this room. And while it's a profession for many of you, I'm getting chills thinking about the family memories that sports can provide. And you, all of you, our state winners, our national winners, you provide those memories for families. And it means the world to us as a board member and as a community, and we thank you. And also, I'm going to be watching Miss Doris Burke and Woj over here on their phones tonight. As an avid NBA fan, I'm waiting for some tweets to hit. It's just thrilling to have you here, and we thank you. Congratulations. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Mark. Please welcome the Executive Director of the National Sports Media Association, and then an award presented before tonight's ceremony for Best Dressed. Ladies and gentlemen, Dave Gorin. I was going to say you were helping us to grab the water, but I decided not.
I heard that already. Thank you, Wes. Thank you, everyone. Sorry, I need a little water because I lost my voice Saturday. Congratulations again to all of our award winners. Thank you all for being here tonight. It's so much fun for me to look out and see all of the people who have come from all over the country to be here in Winston-Salem tonight. This weekend, of course, does not happen without our NSMA members, our donors and sponsors. You know, my brother was watching last year's Banquet, made fun of me for the number of times I said, thank you, thank you, thank you. He was making fun of my cadence. So with that, here goes. To our 3-year pledge donors, Don and Robin Flo, Ben Sutton, David Shannon, and JDL, Learfield IMG College, Ricky Shore, Visit Winston-Salem, John Burris, Ed Pleasance, thank you. To this year's event sponsors, Fox Sports University, the Atlantic Coast Conference, thank you. Table sponsors, ESPN, WIS-TV, and Diane Blixt, thank you. Woody Durham, Voice of College Sports Award sponsors, Learfield IMG and UNC Athletics, thank you. Thanks also to our media sponsors, the Winston-Salem Journal and WXII-TV, our printing sponsors, Excalibur Direct Marketing and JKS Incorporated. Thank you, Wake Forest University Athletics, for your in-kind sponsorships. Thanks also to our Sports Film Festival host, Aperture, and our Sports Book Festival hosts at Bookmarks. That was a blast, by the way. Now I'd like to invite the NSMA board members in attendance to please stand and be recognized, because I personally would like to thank you all for your help and support over the past years. Please stand. Our program committee, all the volunteers and interns, please stand and be recognized. Could not do it without you. Thank you so much. A lot of moving parts to this weekend, as you may imagine. All right, let's get the awards rolling right now. Right here in the city where Clarence Big House Gaines worked his magic to the tune of 828 wins over 47 years. Among his players you may have heard of, Earl the Pearl Monroe, our 2019 Annie Award winner, Cleo Hill, he was our 2019 Annie Award winner. Cleo Hill Sr., or Jr., the NBA's first draft pick. I got to start all over, sorry. Cleo Hill Sr. was the NBA's first-round draft pick from a historically black college and university. And the guy at the end of the layup line in the early 90s, whose mouth was always running, guy by the name of Stephen A. Smith. Indeed, some things do not change. I do want to recognize Cleo Hill Jr., who is here with us tonight. He is now the head basketball coach at Winston-Salem State, his dad's alma mater. Cleo, we are right over there. Thank you, Cleo. The NSMA established the Big House Gaines Award in his memory in 2011. The first winner in Division II was Cleo Hill Jr. Our Division II winner this year led Virginia State University to the CIAA Tournament Championship and a berth in the regional semifinals of the NCAA Tournament. Please join me and welcome Big House Gaines College Basketball Coach of the Year for NCAA Division II, Lonnie Blow Jr.
Good evening. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for being here tonight. And, you know, I had a little speech planned, but that's out the window. I've seen so many people, professionals who I admire and watch from afar that, you know, I was telling my wife down there, I'm just in awe. I'm just in awe. But it's a special, special night for me. I can remember growing up, my dad wasn't a big sports fan. He liked boxing. But other than that, he saw all the other sports as a waste of time. But, you know, he liked Joe Louis. I can remember him watching boxing and, listening to boxing and talking about Joe Louis a lot. But one day in my living room, I heard him and a couple of his friends talking about Clarence Big House Gaines. And as a kid, I didn't know who he was. But I remembered that, and I was kind of surprised, you know, that my dad knew something about someone who was involved in sports other than boxing. So for me to be standing here tonight, receiving the Clarence Big House Gaines Award, really means a lot to me. And it's been a special, special evening for me, and I want to thank all of you for making it special. I'd like to thank everyone on the committee and the Sports Media Association for allowing me to get this award tonight. And again, this means a lot to me, and I'll cherish it as long as I live. Thank you very much.
Congratulations again, Coach Blow. Our Division I winner I actually met in 1987, Final Four, hanging out at Pat O'Brien's in New Orleans. I was hanging out with my then intern from Providence College. Oh, nothing, DB, come on. PC. And her friend left to go to the men's room, came back, there were three men talking to the two young ladies. And they happened to be three assistant coaches from Washington State University. We all became fast friends. I'm in touch with all three to this day. 3 weeks later, Kelvin Sampson was named the head coach at Washington State. Fast forward 28 years, and I bring a High Point University class to a seminar the Charlotte Hornets are hosting, followed by a game against the Houston Rockets, for whom Kelvin was then an assistant coach. After he finished his pregame coaching, I caught his eye. He came over to say hi. He talked to my students. He told me, you know, Dave, I'm an NBA guy now. He was named head coach of the University of Houston Cougars 5 days later. NBA guy, huh? Yeah. His teams have improved in each of his 5 seasons in Houston. The Cougars' win totals, 13, 22, 21. Don't pay attention to my math error there. 27. And this year, 33-4, the American Athletic Conference regular season championship and a berth in the Sweet 16. Please welcome Big House Gaines Award winner for Division I, Kelvin Sampson.
Pat O'Brien's. Huh. It's amazing what people you'll meet over hurricanes, huh? I think it was I was a head coach at Washington State University in the late 80s, early 90s, and before there was Nike, there was actually Converse. And Converse used to take its coaches on a summer trip, the coaches and the wives. And two of the coaches that I had read about, being a student of the game, was John McClendon at Tennessee State University and Big House Gaines at Winston-Salem State. And there was a special coach there by the name of Dean Smith from North Carolina. Coach Smith was Converse coach. Big House Gaines and his beautiful wife, Claire, were there on that trip. John McClendon was on that trip. And I asked Coach Smith, would he introduce me to Big House and Coach McClendon, and he did. And that was something that I've never forgotten. I've only had one NFL team I've ever liked, and that was the Baltimore Colts, and that's because of Johnny Unitas. You know, Johnny Unitas was my guy. I played 18 holes of golf with Johnny Unitas, and he would take his right hand was all messed up, and he had a strap. They'd take and place it over the club every time he had to swing it. So he was a personal hero, but another personal hero was Big House Gaines, not just because he was a great coach, but if you ever met him and saw the kind of person he was, you realize the impact that he had on so many people's lives. So this is a great honor. Share it with so many people. My wife, Karen, who's my high school sweetheart, we're both raised right here in this great state of North Carolina. But to be associated with Coach Big House Gaines makes it even more special. So thank you. A lot of coaches, a lot more deserving than I, so it means a lot. Thank you.
Congratulations, Coach, and congratulations once again to all of our Hall of Famers, our national winners, and all of our state winners. By the way, we have 50% more state winners here this year than we had last year. So the word's getting out. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate it.
The Big House Gaines Coaching Award is just one of the awards that, under Dave's leadership, that have been created here in the last handful of years as part of our National Sports Media Association Awards weekend. The other award is presented annually, and here to do so for the Jim Nantz Award, please welcome the CEO of STAA, the Sportscasters Talent Agency of America, that is John Chalesnik. John.
Good evening. Congratulations to all of the honorees tonight. Before we announce or introduce the Jim Nantz Award winner, I want to thank our judges. For the first time this year, our judging panel is comprised exclusively of former Nantz Award winners, and it's probably going to be that way from here on out, and we take great pride in that. It's the 11th year of the award, so we finally have enough award alumni that we can do that. So thank you to Josh Appel, Adam Cavalier, Alex Faust, Katie Immer, Kevin Fitzgerald, Eric Galanti, Nate Gatter, and Ross Lipman. We also honor, in addition to the nation's most outstanding collegiate sportscaster, 5 additional individuals who earn All-America honors. And those are a senior from Syracuse, Noah Eagle. And I believe Noah's here tonight. Oh, of course, I saw him. I know he's here tonight. A senior from TCU, Alexa Shaw. Another Syracuse student, junior, Jonah Karp. Junior from Florida, Ryan Urquhart. And from Notre Dame, a junior, David Korsanowski. And now, I am very pleased to introduce to you the winner of the 2019 Jim Nantz Award, a senior from Syracuse. Please welcome Drew Carter.
All right, I'll keep this short and sweet because looking out at the audience, I see a bunch of people I've looked up to for years, and you guys should be talking to me, and I shouldn't be talking to you. So this is pretty surreal, and I know West Durham's going to punt me off the stage if I stay up here for more than like 90 seconds. So first of all, I just want to say thank you to you, John. This obviously doesn't happen without you. It's a great award. It's a great organization, and congratulations to all the other All-Americans and everyone who plays top 20. It's really cool. The fact that I'm up here and all those people were, I guess, below me in the rankings doesn't make any sense because there's a lot of talent out there. Second of all, Dave Gorin. I know, Dave, you're the man of the hour tonight. You got the bow tie on and everything, but obviously what you've done with this organization is amazing, and this doesn't happen without you either. So this whole weekend has been phenomenal, so everyone involved with NSMA, thank you so much. A couple quick shout-outs. Diane and Chuck Blixt, you guys have been outstanding to us this entire weekend. Thank you, guys. And then also Nanette, the first person my dad and I met when we came here. Nanette has been so nice for the entire weekend as well. Too many people to thank as far as mentors and friends are concerned, but Syracuse is obviously kind of a mafia, so Matt Park, thank you so much. Jason Benetti's not here tonight, but Bill Roth, thank you as well. John Nicholson, Olivia Stomsky, you guys are the best, and thank you so much. And then last but certainly not least, you guys have been embarrassing me for 22 years now, so Mom, Dad, I'm gonna put the spotlight on you right now. Yeah, seriously, clap it up. Clap it up. You know, it's kind of cliche to say you couldn't have asked for better parents. That's not true. I could have asked for a better vertical, Dad, thanks. If you had been LeBron, that would have been nice. But in all seriousness, I mean, the fact that you sent me to Syracuse from Minnesota says a lot. And you guys have always supported me, even though I'm not always the smartest person. But, you know, I know you guys are hard on yourselves, and I think that's a good quality you passed down to me, but my sister, Samantha, who's 3.5 years older than I am, is the best person I know, and we made this happen together. This does not just happen without you guys, so you must be doing something right. So thank you guys so much. Thank you, everyone here. Go Syracuse, back where it belongs.
Before you run, we have a special video tribute for you and the other honorees. Can't see it. Send it to you.
Hello, friends. It's Jim Nance. I just want to make this short and sweet. My heartiest congratulations to all the honorees tonight, especially those going into the Hall of Fame. What a remarkable group that's being recognized tonight. And also a shout out to Drew Carter. It's been many years now that I've been so fortunate to have my name associated with the top young sports commentators coming along from our colleges and universities across the country. But this young man is being recognized tonight, Drew Carter. His tape, his reel, it is absolutely amazing. It is a sure thing. I'm going to enjoy sitting back and watching for decades to come. A very big career. I'm proud of you, Drew. Congratulations. And one last thing. Thanks to everyone that manages our organization all year long. It's vitally important to all of us. And I just want to thank you for what you do for our industry. Congratulations to everyone in the room tonight. Have a great time.
Good to see Jim getting through another tough day at Pebble Beach, isn't it? John, one quick point here. It was Ian you saw, not Noah. That's okay. I grew up that way too. Answer the phone at home. Woody? No. I can relate. Let's move to the Hall of Fame portion of the program. The Hall of Fame first appeared in the National Sports Media Association in 1962. The very first inductee was a writer, Grantland Rice. The next year, the first broadcaster was inducted in the great Ted Husing. Tonight, the 110th member is enshrined in the National Sports Media Hall of Fame. And here to present Tony Kornheiser is apparently the better of the golfing Kornheisers. Please welcome Michael Kornheiser.
I'll be honest, it's great to see that video from Nance, but Drew, that voice, it's tough to follow. Tony will tell you he was lucky. Forget his work on TV or in various forms of spoken media. He knew from a young age that the only job he wanted to be was a newspaper man, a sports writer. I'll tell you what was really lucky. The most pressing question he was asked when he was 22 and interviewing for that first job at Newsday was, "Do you have a car?" He's come a long way from driving up and down the Southern State Parkway on Long Island covering high school sports. Actually, has he? He still doesn't like to travel, and I'm sure he can recall some of those box scores and numbers Frank Alasia put up more readily than who did what in yesterday afternoon's Nats loss. But one thing that has not changed in any of his roles over the years, from staff writer to columnist to talking head, is his love for finding the right angle to a story and sharing it with all of us. I'm sure many of you have been on the receiving end in your own newsrooms to hear Tony speak into the phone and ask, without any preamble, "This is Kornheiser. What do you got?" He started in newspapers with the goal to write 2,500-word features that not only defined his subject, but also had the depth to make you cry. What he is most well known for now is for translating the never-ending stream of sports news to us in the form of a daily afternoon conversation, PTI, where Washington once looked to him to go beyond the scores, to make sense of the personalities, the implications of in-game decisions, and the ups and downs inherent to any season. All of us now look to him to sift through the distractions to find the real story, what's important. For many, his opinions were the first thing they looked for in the morning in the paper. And for others, when we watch PTI, his thoughts are the final piece in deciding what to think about an outcome, good trade, bad timeout. What's more, no matter whether he is talking into a microphone on his daily podcast, The Tony Kornheiser Show, available wherever you download your favorite podcasts and featuring golf analysis from yours truly. Thank you. Or whether he's arguing back and forth with Wilbon, you can still see the same structure and clarity that comes from his writing. Sometimes he moves carefully with precision, building up to an idea in a few paragraphs, taking his time. Other times, he hits you over the head with the direct line of, "You know what, so-and-so's an idiot." Regardless of the tactics or the form, he has the ability to get us, his audience, to join him in his thinking in a way that doesn't feel like he's talking down to you. He often engages us with rhetorical questions, offering the counter to his own argument. And at the very least, we get a few laughs along the way and appreciate his honest and unique perspective, where he's still as invested chasing the story as that 22-year-old with his own car. Please join me in congratulating my dad, Tony Kornheiser, and welcoming into the National Sports Media Hall of Fame. Dad, to borrow your question, what do you got?
How great is it to have your kid introduce you?
You gotta take her picture to hold this.
Hmm?
You gotta take her picture.
Oh, you want me to take a picture? My God, that's heavy. Seriously, I'm an old man. This is heavy. All right, take it. I'm going to try and be quick because I'm old and I have to pee. And I got a tan suit on and I don't want to do it here. I had two questions for Dave when I told him I was coming here, because I'm so used to doing television now. I said, "Do you have prompter?" He said, "No, people just read their speeches." I said, "You got makeup?" He said, "No," so Jackie Walker graciously came to put powder on my head. I get these awards now because I'm old, and people sit around, they say, "Kornheiser doesn't have this one. You better get it quick, he's gonna die soon." And we can maybe sell a couple of tables, so that's why I'm here. When Bob Ryan, the quintessential American sports writer, told me a few months back that I was going to get this honor, he said, "Tony, you have to make a speech." I had Bobby, and he said, "No, it'll be easy, just make a speech." And I thought, what is the greatest acceptance speech I have ever seen? And in fact, it came from somebody that I went to high school, not to high school with, to elementary school and junior high school with, Errol Morris. I don't expect you to know his name. He's a documentarian, all right? And he was nominated a number of times, including for a documentary called The Thin Blue Line, where he actually got a guy off death row in Texas. He did not win that year. He was nominated some years later for The Fog of War about Robert McNamara and the Vietnam War, and he won. And everybody in my school is watching this, watching the Academy Awards, because Errol's nominated. They call his name, he comes up, he's wearing a string tie, he looks ridiculous. Comes up, he grabs the award, and he says, "What took you people so long?" And he walks off the stage. It would be really snarky if I did the same thing, wouldn't it? So I thought, you know, I could talk about all the people I knew who were in the Hall of Fame. I've worked with so many of them. I know the TV guys. I knew Howard Cosell. I had dinner at his apartment. He actually talked like that in his apartment with nobody around. I know Al Michaels well. I'm invited to Bel Air if I ever go out to LA to play with him. He's the only golfer in America that plays as much as I do who is worse than I am. Dick Schaap was a dear, dear friend. Dick Schaap wrote a letter of recommendation for my daughter to go to college in the days before you knew you could just write a check for $500,000 to a sailing coach. Yeah, who knew? I know the magazine guys. Frank DeFord came to my house in D.C. to offer me a job at the National, which I'm glad I didn't take, but the ceiling in our basement was like 6.5 feet, and Frank DeFord was 6.5 feet, and he was so uncomfortable the whole time. It made me so happy to see him squirm. It made me happy. I drank with Dan Jenkins at Runyon's, but who didn't drink with Dan Jenkins at Runyon's? Anyway, Bob said to me, this is like Cooperstown, so if it's like Cooperstown, you know, you get to pick the hat you wear. And I'm very grateful to ESPN, and I love what I do. I love what I do. Television makes you rich, makes you famous. That's good. Everybody should want that. But in my heart, I'm a newspaper sports writer. That's how I started. That's what I wanted to be. That's what I am in my head. I got very lucky last year. I got a ticket to Bruce Springsteen's show on Broadway. The first 10 minutes of the show, Bruce Springsteen talks about being 5, 6, 7 years old and watching Ed Sullivan on TV and seeing Elvis Presley and knowing right then and there, that's what I want to do. I want to get a guitar. I want to be a rock and roll star. I was 7, 8, 9 years old. My dad used to come home from New York City carrying the Post and the News, and we used to get Newsday at home. That's all I wanted to be. I got it very young, be a newspaper sports writer. It's all I wanted. I think that what is my son going to tell his son about what I did? I've got an Olivetti letter of 32 portable typewriter at home. Shaughnessy's probably got 3 of them. Ryan, I'm sure has them too. It's from the Stone Age. Nobody knows what it is anymore. I can't even imagine how my grandson will understand what it's like to call in at 1 in the morning and say, get me dictation, and read a story to somebody who's typing on the other end. But that's what I wanted. I got my first job at Newsday, and I got it because George Vesey, who's a member of the Hall of Fame, left to go to the New York Times. I left Newsday, I went to the New York Times. I worked with Dave Anderson and Red Smith. The first, the pilot for the original Sports Reporter show, which was on for 30 years on Sunday mornings. The pilot was Dave Anderson, Will McDonough, Mike Lupica, and me, all people in here. I met Bob Ryan there. We became friends. I met Mitch Albom there. He played piano at my daughter's bat mitzvah. If you're looking around for somebody you need, call Mitch Albom. He's really good. I went from there to the Washington Post. John Feinstein was there. Sally Jenkins was about to be hired. Tom Boswell was there. Dave Kindred was there. When Kindred left to go to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Ben Bradley, that Ben Bradley, came to me and Boz and said, I want both of you to write the column because neither of you is good enough on your own to replace Kindred. Shirley Povich was there. I think I'm the only person who ever worked with Shirley Povich and Red Smith. I think that's true. And people said I could not carry their typewriters. I did carry their typewriters. I carried Red's typewriter to Shea Stadium and Yankee Stadium. We used to have lunch at a place in Manhattan called the Café des Artistes. Red was younger then than I am now, and in those days you could smoke in a restaurant. Red would light up a Marlboro. Somebody would come in and look at Red disapprovingly, and he would say, Tony, finish this cigarette. That was my job at the New York Times. Finish Red's cigarettes. I carried Shirley's typewriter to Camden Yards, to Memorial Stadium, to RFK. On the night that Cal Ripken broke Lou Gehrig's record, Shirley was the only guy in the place that had been to both of those events. So as fate would have it, a ball comes up into the press box and lands in Wilbon's then ample stomach. And I say, Mike, give me the ball. And he says, why? I said, we got to give it to Shirley. Shirley was older then than I am now. Shirley left that night flipping the ball in the hall at Camden Yards. He was about 83 years old. Was the happiest he ever was. You know, I mean, that's my frame of reference. The first story I ever wrote for Newsday was about a guy named Jimmy Elder. He was a boxer, heavyweight boxer, who later died of a brain aneurysm. When the story came out, I saw my byline for the first time. I cut it out with scissors. I put it in a folder. I did that with every story I ever wrote, in every newspaper, every magazine. It's 40 years of this stuff. I've never read back on them. I've said to my son, do me a favor. Just look at some of the features. Just tell me if I was any good, because I thought I was pretty good. I'll get out of here. I'll tell you this one story is the greatest thing that ever happened to me in newspapers. I was working at the New York Times. I had a big feature in the Sunday section on free agency in the late 70s. At that point, and I think to today, you could get an early copy of the Sunday edition of the New York Times on the stands in Manhattan at 9 o'clock at night. I got a copy of the paper. I get on the train. I'm going to Island Park. It's the next to last stop on the Long Beach line. As we get close to the station, I see this guy in front of me. He's reading the early edition, section 5, Bulldog edition of the New York Times. He starts on the top left where my story is. He reads. He doesn't go to the jump. He doesn't go inside. God, how can you not go inside? He turns his eyes up to the top right of the paper. Train stops in Island Park, doors open. I tap him on the shoulder. And I say, you know, that story on free agency, it's really good. You ought to go inside. You ought to finish. It's really good. He says, how do you know? I says, I wrote it. It's 45 years since that. I can't think of that or talk about it without getting choked up. That's why we do what we do. We go on TV so you'll watch us. We go on radio so you'll listen to us. We write in newspapers so you'll read us. Thank you so much for this honor. As Jimmy Breslin once said, thanks for the use of the hall.
Tony, congratulations. The unique thing, as I said at the top about this event, is in the span of minutes and seconds, we can honor history and be excited about our future. For the second consecutive year, the National Sports Writer of the Year doesn't come from a newspaper. He comes from a .com. And Evan Turner was traded for Kent Bazemore earlier today, Woj. You tweeted it. Ladies and gentlemen, the NSMA's National Sports Writer of the Year from ESPN.com, please welcome Adrian Janowski.
Thank you. Congratulations. Thanks so much. Did I draw the short straw having to follow Kornheiser? First, I want to thank the NSMA, and Dave Gore and the staff, the volunteers that make this event, this remarkable weekend. And I think what the NSMA does to elevate our profession, make us all feel a part of something bigger, connected, is pretty incredible, and I hope that none of us take it for granted. And what an honor to be here with all the state winners, with a Hall of Fame class that's really a who's who of some of the best to ever do it. Of course, Tony, Doc Emmerich, Peter King, and Bob Lee. And I've got to tell you, as a kid growing up in Bristol, Connecticut, I once remember asking my dad to stop our family station wagon at an intersection because I saw Bob Lee filling his gas tank at a self-serve station. That's a true story. Yeah. And then 2 years ago, they gave me a cubicle at ESPN like 10 feet away from Bob. And listen, I'll still go pump gas for you if you need it. I'm glad to. I'd like to share a few thoughts about my colleague and friend Doris Burke, who's the biggest star in any room or any arena in all of basketball. As you may know, Doris will be recognized tonight as the National Sportscaster of the Year, which is a hell of a finish for a pass-first point guard out of mighty Providence College. I've learned as much from Doris as anyone I've ever worked with. At the very top of her craft, she has a regimen she never deviates from. Her genius is in the details of her painstaking preparation. Before the ball tips off, before the cameras are ever turned on, Doris Burke has already kicked your ass. And I think, too, one of the traits that I especially admire about Doris happens to be something that I think is increasingly absent in our industry, and that's that she is always happy for other people's successes. Not the hollow Twitter, Instagram kind of happy, but a sparkle in her eye, cracking in her voice, a long, big hug kind of happy. And someone else doing well doesn't make DB feel less than or feel threatened. And people ask me all the time, what is Doris like? And I tell them the same thing I do when they ask me that question about Golden State's Steph Curry. I say she's exactly who you hope she is, and probably even a little better. That Doris Burke is the first female winner of this award tonight is historic, and it's significant. And it also made me take a longer look down the roster of past recipients among the National Sports Writer of the Year winners, and it's an incredibly inspiring, historically deserving list full of industry icons. I mean, it starts with Red Smith in 1959. It's also a list that's probably incomplete, or let me put it this way, and I wrote this before Tony told us his story about his concert, but I mean, it's a list, it's a run of white guys so long that I thought someone handed me the backstage VIP pass list at a Springsteen concert. I mean, folks, look around tonight. We have an incredible group of state winners that include many talented, impactful women and people of color. We have them on the national level, too. And I'm honored to be among you tonight, but soon, and next year is fine with me, let's give real consideration to this incredible award to someone who doesn't look anything like I do. I mean, listen, there are hundreds, maybe more, sports journalists who are qualified, deserving to be the NSMA Sports Writer of the Year, whose work in all different shapes and forms is of the highest caliber and impact. Please know that that fact is not lost on me standing here. This business is so rich with talent. I know people talk about the golden age of our business. I still think we're in one. I'm humbled to be here. And that's why, to me, this is as much more of a team award than an individual one. It's probably not a coincidence that I hadn't won this prior to coming to ESPN. I think part of that fact is the scope of our platforms, but I also think the support and freedom that I'm afforded to do my job. And that's thanks to a lot of people, many of whom traveled down to Winston-Salem tonight. Although he's not here, ESPN's president, Jimmy Pitaro, took a huge chance hiring me at Yahoo a dozen years ago. He continues at ESPN to be one of the best leaders that I've ever known. Connor Schell helped bring me to ESPN, supports me and our whole NBA group every day in big ways and small. Mike Schiffman and Stephanie Drulli, Nate Ravitch, Lauren Nelson, Norby Williamson, Tim Corrigan, incredible support and resources they all give me. I want to acknowledge Matt Kramer, Dave Coonan here. And speaking of support, my sister Brenda, my brother-in-law Danny drove all the way up from Hilton Head. Brenda was the first and the most important role model in my life. And since I started to cover the NBA on a full-time basis in 2007, I've been blessed with two particularly remarkable editors. First, Johnny Ludden at Yahoo, who really helped me figure out how to carve out a new way to cover the NBA in the digital age. And now at ESPN, Christina Douglas, who let me understand right away on my very first day how this was going to go between us. It was sort of like when the recruit gets to campus. Coach Sampson knows this. The recruit gets to campus and the sales pitches are over, right? I was fumbling with a couple arms full of suits and shirts that I had driven up to Bristol for the start of NBA free agency, and I needed someone to help show me from my car into one of the buildings to store it all. And I remember asking if she could help me carry some of it, plus my laptop and whatever else was falling out of my arms, and she did, but not before telling me, hey, just so we are clear, I am not your assistant. And in my notes, I wrote, I am not your assistant in capital letters. It was not told in lowercase, but as it turned out, I'd become her assistant. It's worked out pretty well for ESPN. 25 years ago, my wife Amy and I flew down to Carolina for this very award ceremony. I had won the state award at 24 years old, and the NSMA made me feel like $1 million, even when I probably didn't have 10 in my pocket. I got to see a bunch of my heroes here that weekend. Peter Gammons was the National Sports Writer of the Year that year. He handed me my plaque at the ceremony, and then he posed for a photo shaking my hand. I framed the picture. It still sits in my home office. That was back in 1994. I just hoped I could have a career in this business. I hoped on that trip I could meet somebody here who would help get me out of Waterbury. But if I'm being honest with myself, whatever success I've had on this journey, a good portion of it is because I've been really, really selfish. And everyone else sacrificed, so I didn't have to, because I can promise you that there's nothing normal about having me as a husband or a father. Maybe I've tried to convince myself of that it was normal, but it's not normal. And so I owe such a debt of gratitude to my children, Annie and Ben. I've spent most of their lives, day after day, hour after hour, working to build, maintain relationships necessary to break stories around the NBA, probably hundreds of them, relationships. And I think there were too many days I was far too versed in what was going on in some teams' trade talks when I should have been more focused on what was going on in their lives. Hundreds of conversations in my house have been interrupted with phone calls, family trips detoured in the breakdown lanes, hazard lights on, me asking Ben to chase down the spelling of some Eastern European power forward that I couldn't remember. Ben Janowski was the only kid on the street whose father could be seen standing in the front yard playing catch with his son and texting between throws. So whatever attention, accolades that come with any of this, they all pale with the privilege it is to be your dad. Our jobs aren't that difficult if you're willing to dump almost everything on your wife to handle. I am married to a beautiful, smart, kind woman who has my tweets on mobile alert, not because she cares about anything of what I'm reporting, but because, and I'm quoting Amy Janowski here, it's proof of life when you're not around. In this life, I've been sure of two things. I wanted to grow up to be a sports writer, and I wanted to grow old with a freshman girl from Rochester who I met at the student newspaper at St. Bonaventure. In the end, I'm getting to live out the only two dreams that ever mattered to me. No one's been luckier. Thanks, everyone. Congratulations to all the winners, and have a great night.
That's awesome. If I could, I'd like to have all of our state sports writers to come over here to the side stage, and we will ask the very difficult process of having you line up in alphabetical order. Oh, you'd be amazed. By the way, I'm pleased to report that Ryan Mcgee, on assignment in Omaha, has elected to check in tonight, and he sends his highest regards and a picture of Otis Campbell from the Andy Griffith Show to let us know he's doing just fine at Omaha tonight with Vanderbilt, Michigan. He asked how we were doing. I said, we're on a record pace. He said, do like I did and forget to bring Frank Thomas back up at the end to sing God Bless America. Frank, we won't do that tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, to announce the State Sports Writers of the Year, who will be presented their honor by our National Sports Writer of the Year, it's my pleasure to welcome a longtime friend of the National Sports Media Association and a man who is qualified beyond all others in this country to do this very thing. Ladies and gentlemen, Doug Logan.
Thank you, Wes. On behalf of our state winners, heartiest congratulations to national honorees Doris Burke and Adrian Janowski. And a special salute to Hall of Fame inductees Doc Emmerich, Bob Lee, Peter King, and Tony Kornheiser. Will Hall of Fame sports writer Peter King please join me on stage to help with our presentation? This year's National Sports Media Association Class of State Honorees includes 41 first-time winners and a record equaling 7 women. Here tonight, our honorees represent 43 states, and we have with us 23 first-time winners. So now let's meet our NSMA State Sports Writers of the Year. From Arkansas, 16 years with the Northwest Arkansas Media and the Democrat Gazette, he covers high school sports, AA baseball naturals, and Razorbacks women's basketball. First win for Paul Boyd. From California, covering Bay Area sports for more than 2 decades, she's a veteran of 11 Olympics, several World Cups, and the Tour de France. She's authored books with Hope Solo and Jenny Finch. Third honor for Ann Killian. Also from California, 22 years with the San Francisco Chronicle, 21 seasons covering the Oakland A's. Her major feature stories include one about the A's outfielder Stephen Piscotty and his mother Gretchen, who was dying of ALS. First win for Susan Slusser. From Connecticut, in his 31st year at the Hartford Courant, he covers Huskies men's basketball and writes a weekly column. In July, his book, Franchise on the Rise, The First 20 Years of the New York Yankees, was released by Skyhorse Publishing. 5th victory for Dom Amore. From Georgia, 30 remarkable years at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, he's covered the Bulldogs in football, Atlanta soccer, and Tiger Woods' return to Victory Circle. 10th win for Steve Hummer. From Idaho, 6 years with the Idaho Press, he's the beat writer covering Boise State football and basketball. In addition to his feature writing, he covered the NFL and NBA drafts. Second honor for B.J. Raines. Our Indiana winner is Terry Hutchins. It's his second honor. A longtime fixture on the Hoosier beat, he also covered IU sports for CNHI Sports. Sadly, Terry died in an auto accident last December. He's represented tonight by his widow Susan, his mother Dina, and sons Brian and Kevin. From Louisiana, in his 23rd year with the Associated Press, he covered the Sugar Bowl, LSU football, the Saints, and the Pelicans. He also flew to Russia to report on the World Cup. First trip to Winston-Salem for Brett Martell. From Maryland, beat writer for the Baltimore Sun, covering the Baltimore Ravens since the year 2000. His contributions to ESPN include appearances on SportsCenter, NFL Live, and Sunday NFL Countdown. First win, Jamison Hensley. From Massachusetts, a full-time writer with the Boston Globe since 1981. He's chronicling the high renaissance of the Boston sports with the Red Sox, the Patriots, and the Bruins. 13th honor for Dan Shaughnessy. From Minnesota, in his second full season at the Atlantic, he follows the Vikings and the Timberwolves, reporting on the Vikings' controversial win over the Saints and Jimmy Butler's trade request to the T-Wolves. First honor for John Krasinski. From Montana, 19th year with the Gazette in Billings, he covered Montana State's late season push to the FCS playoffs in football and the Bobcats' Tyler Hall in basketball. 4th win for Greg Rockach. From New York, the 30-year beat writer covering the Orange basketball program for the Post-Standard in Syracuse. His work has earned him awards from the U.S. Basketball Writers Association and the New York State Publishers Association. First win for Mike Waters. From North Carolina, he began his career some 40 years ago right here in Winston-Salem. A 30-plus year veteran with the Greensboro News and Record, he follows the NFL, college football and basketball, NASCAR, golf, and his favorite, bass fishing. Second honor for Ed Harden. From North Dakota, in his 7th year writing for The Forum in Fargo-Moorhead, he covers high school sports and college hockey. First visit to Winston-Salem, Chris Murphy. From Oregon, he writes 4 columns a week while covering the Trailblazers and Oregon State football. He also released his 7th book, Jailblazers, How the Portland Trailblazers Became the Bad Boys of Basketball. 6th recognition for Kerry Eggers. From Pennsylvania, writing for the Philadelphia Inquirer and Daily News, he covered the Eagles to the Super Bowl. He also authored the book Underdogs, the Philadelphia Eagles' emotional road to Super Bowl victory. First win for Zach Berman. From South Carolina, covering Clemson football for the Charleston Post and Courier, she followed the Tigers to their 4th straight playoff appearance and their 2nd title in 3 years. Now writing for The Athletic, second honor for Grace Reynard. Also from South Carolina, serving as a sports reporter, columnist, and video producer for the Greenville News since 2005, he chronicled Clemson's national championship and led coverage of the transfer of quarterback Kelly Bryant. First win, Manny Robinson. From Texas, he covered the rise of Longhorns football from an opening season loss to a Sugar Bowl victory over Georgia in a top 10 ranking. He also follows the PGA and Major League Baseball. 4th honor for Kirk Bowles. From Virginia, 35 years with the Daily Press and Newport News. He covered the historic loss and historic wins for the University of Virginia Cavaliers basketball program. 12th win, David Teal. From Washington, 5 years as beat writer for the Seattle Seahawks and the NFL for the News Tribune in Tacoma. His human interest features highlighted Doug Baldwin's efforts on police reform and the drafting of one-handed player Shaquem Griffin. First honor for Greg Bell. And from Wisconsin, more than 3 decades writing for the Milwaukee Sentinel and Journal-Sentinel, he followed the Brewers' surprising run to the National League Championship Series. Second honor for Tom Haudricourt. Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a big round of applause for all of our state-winning sports writers.
Thank you, Doug. Doug will be back in just a moment for our State Sportscasters of the Year. Now another Hall of Fame induction, the 111th member of the National Sports Media Association Hall of Fame is Doc Emmerich, and here to present Doc for introduction, please welcome a 6-time State Sportscaster of the Year in the state of Tennessee and one of the legendary voices of the National Hockey League on radio and television. Please welcome Pete Weber.
Good evening, folks. What a privilege this is. Our next inductee understands and relates to the concept of dues paying and the brotherhood that comes out of that better than anyone I've met in over 40 years behind a microphone. He knows where his roots are. He relishes that. He learned to love the game by listening to and then being tutored by the great Bob Chase, whose love of hockey always came through during his 63 years of calling the Fort Wayne Comets, most of those on Whoa-Whoa Radio. Thanks to that relationship, Mike has shared that with his audiences, whether they be of the Port Huron Flags, the Maine Mariners, Philadelphia Flyers, New York Rangers, and the New Jersey Devils, as well as his national audiences, where most of you have probably consumed his work on ESPN, Fox, CBS, and now NBC and NBCSN. He's described it all, and he sort of likes the robust style of play. Starting with Mike Boland's 7-goal, 306 penalty minute season with Port Huron in 1977, to Glenn Cochran's 1-goal, 320 penalty minutes with the Maine Mariners. And by the way, one of the greatest bloopers of all time appeared in the Philadelphia Flyers media guide the next year. In describing Glenn Cochran in the personal notes, it said, "Gentile off the ice." Then he went on and described the scoring feats, a 50-goal season by Philadelphia's Reggie Leach, and the pure goaltending genius of the game's most successful goaltender, Marty Broder. A PhD in communications from Bowling Green State, our game's doc found out almost immediately how lucrative a career in hockey might be for him as an unpaid correspondent on the Pittsburgh Penguins beat for the Beaver County Times. He's expanded upon that somewhat. Ladies and gentlemen, with all humility and a great feeling of privilege on my part, I present to you for induction into the NSMA Hall of Fame, Doc Mike Emmerich.
Thank you all. It is wonderful to be here in this state talking about this sport because only a couple of 100 yards away, you had the best team in all of professional hockey. The Thunderbirds played 60 games and lost 7. Nobody in all of professional hockey did that. They won the Federal League Championship. Down the road in Charlotte, the Checkers won the regular season in the American Hockey League, and they won the playoffs too. And further away, a conference final for the Hurricanes and their state award-winning broadcaster, John Forsland. This is quite a state and quite a privilege for me to be standing here in this state. The program we all got has a lot of nice pictures. More be taken over there. But in this section here, some of them have come up already, and more will later. All of these names. And associated with each one of those names are even more names that are countless. Because behind every one of these names is probably someone sitting at their table tonight, and in addition, names in their past, names that got them in here tonight. Some samples from my past. Una McClurg, 5th grade teacher, told me that any word that I used 5 times was mine forever. Vocabulary. Nancy Lutz, 8th grade teacher, told me to never give up, despite rejection because I was going into a competitive business. I wanted to be a hockey announcer from the time that I was 14. There were other people that came along in my life that added to that too. And inside this program, and all of these pictures, and all of the people that are here tonight, there are people that might be nameless to me because I haven't met all of you and know the people in your background, but they are all important to you, and they're the reason that you're here. Pete mentioned that unpaid job, Beaver County Times. I went to the editor and said, I'll cover the Penguins for free if you get me a pass. I just wanted to get into hockey in the worst way. The editor said, sounds like a good deal to me, you're on. So for 1 year, I was a member of the National Hockey League Writers Association. Got me a plastic card, got in free, got a good seat for the game, got to talk to lots of people. One of them was the coach of the Penguins, Red Kelly. I went down one night after a loss. Only 2 of us went down. Local TV guy named Myron Cope broadcast the Steelers for years. He and I went down, and Red Kelly said to us after the game, he wasn't talking about that game, he was talking about life. And he said, you know, when things get really hard, and he held up this hand, the hand that had held the Stanley Cup 8 times, he said, when things get really hard, you can count on one hand the number of people that are going to be there for you. Maybe you can think of people at difficult times in your life that have been there for you. I have had cancer. I have been fired. I have lost parents. I've lost family members. Some of you may not understand this, but some of those hard losses have also involved family members with 4 legs and a tail, but losses nonetheless. And there have been as many as 5 and even more who have been there for me. Who are those who have been there for you? It won't take you long to think of them, will it? My wife Joyce of 41 years has been there for all of those, including the firing. But there were people who I didn't choose that were there too. They were chosen for me. They were chosen to be color analysts on broadcasts. The job description did not include being there for me in personal crises, but they were anyway. In chronological order, Bill Clement, Peter McNabb, Chico Resch, Eddie Olczyk. Those were the ones that were there for me. Later on tonight, when you get back home, maybe as you guys unbutton your collar, take off your tie, you ladies take off your earrings and undo your necklace, just in a brief time, you might think of those people that have been there for you in difficult times and those who got you into this room tonight just because of how important they were to your past. If you're a praying person, be thankful for them, but think of them nonetheless. That's what I'm thinking of when I come to this room with all of these significant people in broadcasting and in sports writing. Gosh, it's an honor to be here with so many people of great importance. And to be chosen in this group is even more significant because I, Tony, have never played golf with a president. I, Bob, have never interviewed 4 presidents. And I, Peter, have never written any books. I have autographed a number of checkbooks. And the presidents I have contact with are these. But I understand later tonight, as a Pirate fan, I am given a baseball bat. Our team isn't doing very well right now, and I think I might be able to help them because I can, at least at age 72, lay down a better bunt than they can. Thank you.
Just amazing. Doc, congratulations. Ladies and gentlemen, we've reached the very minimal portion of the program where we call this an intermission. We give you 3 to 5 minutes to pause. It says something in here about bladders. I'm not going to refer to that. You can watch a television program and see a commercial for said event. But anyway, we'll give you a couple minutes of intermission, and we'll be right back with more awards and our State Sportscasters of the Year, our National Sportscaster of the Year, and 2 more Hall of Famers. As Dave Gorin mentioned earlier tonight, Earl the Pearl Monroe was the recipient of this year's Ann Spencer Sports Connector Award. It's given to a person who has connected the community through sports. Needless to say, the Pearl did just that when he was a Winston-Salem State Ram, averaging 41.5 points a game his senior year, leading the Rams to what was then the NCAA College Division national title. And despite having a stroke in March and then a pacemaker implanted, Earl the Pearl Monroe was in Winston-Salem on April 26th to receive the Annie.
I thank the Winston-Salem State, I guess it's university at this point, who's always been supportive of anything that I've done. I'm glad I'm an alumnus. I'm glad I came to Winston-Salem. I'm glad it's been a part of my life. And now, you guys have also been a part of my life. I appreciate everything. Thank you so much. Have a great week.
Indeed. Congratulations again to Earl the Pearl Monroe. If you're from this area and want to know how you can get involved with the Ann Spencer Connector, please see one of the board members here tonight or Dave Gorin before leaving. It's a marvelous event in this community, and we're proud to be behind it. Now let's pause for a moment of reflection and take a look at the names and remember those who we have lost in the last calendar year from sports media. Thank you. Now back to our awards program. Our next gentleman will be presenting an award that is obviously very personal to our family and was one that was initiated a year ago. It's the Woody Durham Voice of College Sports Award, a collaborative effort between Learfield IMG College and the University of North Carolina Athletic Department. Please help me in welcoming from Learfield IMG, Vice President of Broadcast Operations and Multimedia Rights, Tom Bowman, and joining him tonight, our first winner of the Woody Durham Voice of College Sports Award, the 26th-time Indiana Sportscaster of the Year, the legendary voice of the Hoosiers, and a damn good golfer, Don Fisher.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Wes. Always a pleasure. I stood up here a year ago and announced an award that we didn't tell anybody about. And we did that for a reason. We wanted to come together and bring kind of a spotlight on broadcasters that really embodied what Woody Durham meant. And so last year, Learfield IMG College, the University of North Carolina Athletics Department, and the NSMA, we partnered together to create the Woody Durham Voice of College Sports Awards. Woody meant a lot to the UNC family, and a lot of you in this room are UNC fans. I know some of you are Duke fans, but it's kind of hard to argue with Woody Durham. I know if you're a Duke fan, that's okay. But he brought those moments to those of us that were listening that we couldn't see ourselves. He was an incredible broadcaster, and he meant a lot to everybody. At the end of the day, we chose this award because what Woody embodied was what all of us wanted to be as broadcasters. So as we vote for this award each year, this recipient is always chosen by a committee based on some particular criteria that Woody stood for. Preparation, recognizability with their school, tenure, efforts in the community, mentorship with young broadcasters, and of course, character. Last year, we were very honored to, where'd you go? Oh, there you are. You know, he's a radio guy, I can't find him, there's no pictures. We were very fortunate last year to have our initial recipient be Don Fisher. And once again, we weren't allowed to tell anybody because, in fact, as he sat at the table right over there, Don himself didn't know that we were doing this. Now we're very fortunate to be able to announce this in advance so these recipients can be supported by their family, by their organizations, and tonight we've done just that. This year's recipient just finished up his 50th season calling Pitt men's basketball and his 45th season behind the mic for Pitt football. If you live in the state of Pennsylvania and you listen to Pitt athletics, you know exactly who I'm talking about. As the voice of the Panthers, Bill Hillgrove is synonymous with Pitt. He's a Pennsylvania boy, graduated from Duquesne, and began his radio journey as a DJ, very much like you, Don Fisher, with WKJF. His career at Pitt began in 1969 when he was hired to do road basketball games, and the following year he joined the football broadcast. He's done television, radio, including being tapped 25 years ago by Pittsburgh Steelers owner Dan Rooney himself, I believe the word I saw was handpicked, to succeed the retiring Jack Fleming. He was honored in 2007 by the National Football Foundation with the Chris Schenkel Award for Excellence in College Football Broadcasting. And if that wasn't impressive enough, in this last football season or sports season in November, he was given his own bobblehead for the fans to take home and be honored. And to me, that's got to be the pinnacle of that. At the end of the day, that's the true sign that you've made it. So it is with great honor that I am allowed to bring up the 2019 Woody Durham Voice of College Sports Award winner from Pitt, Mr. Bill Hillgrove.
I have a couple of thank yous. First of all, to my posse that I brought down from Pittsburgh tonight. And that would include Pat Gallagher, the president of PGT Trucking, who got me here safe, sound, and semi-sober. Dr. Mark Duca, who is the team physician for both Pitt and the Steelers. Pat Bostic, my partner in the booth for Pitt football and a member of the athletic department. And last but not least, my son, Bill Jr., who shares a booth with me on Saturdays and Sundays. So let's have a hand for the posse. Also would like to thank the Durham family. I met Woody, a lot of years ago, and of course regularly see Wes on the ACC assignment board, and they're just class people, and it's a true honor for me to even be associated with her name. Also to Don Fisher, who blazed the trail and got the first award, and of course my peers who apparently voted this award to me. I'd like to thank Dave Gorin and this great organization, NSMA, and also the University of Pittsburgh, and I'll just put in one plug. Hail to Pitt. I can't believe I'm up here receiving an award for having the privilege and the blessing to describe the exploits of great athletes in basketball. Bill Knight, Sam Clancy, Brandon Knight, Charles Smith. In football, I never did Mike Ditka's games, he was before me, but I played on a scramble team in a golf tournament with Ditka. We came to the last hole having to use my drive, and I am nervous. I stick the ball in the ground, the peg in the ground, and the ball on top of it, and I hear this voice behind me say, Hillgrove, if you do not hit this ball fair, I'm gonna kick your butt. Well, Mike Ditka, what can I say? No greater motivator than fear. I'm getting an award for having described the exploits of Tony Dorsett and Dan Marino, Hugh Green, Ricky Jackson, Russ Grimm, Mark May, my partner for 7 years, the late Bill Fralick, Jimbo Covert, Darrell Rivas, Aaron Donald, Larry Fitzgerald, James Conner, John Majors, Jackie Sherrill. I'm getting an award for having the privilege to talk about those guys. I might not be as lucky as Lou Gehrig, but because of this award, I can once in a while peek into his neighborhood. And I thank you folks. And I want one more thank you to my wife, Rosette, of 54 years. Because of the nature of this profession, she has lived in punt formation for 54 years. You know the secret to a long marriage? Ballroom dancing. Twice a week. She goes Tuesdays, I go Thursdays. Thank you so much.
Oh boy. Point of clarity, just for the record, I'm not quite sure Ditka used the word but. Are you, Pete? No, Ditka didn't say but. That's right. Thank you, Coach Hillgrove. I appreciate you cleaning up for the room. Oh, he's a prince now. Ladies and gentlemen, our next Hall of Fame inductee will be Peter King, to present Peter for induction into the National Sports Media Association Hall of Fame. Please welcome the former managing editor of Sports Illustrated and one of the really fine print people in all of sports, Mr. Mark Mulvoy.
Tony, I think it was you who stole my Underwood letter, Olivetti 22, from a hotel room during the Canada-Russia hockey series in Moscow in 1972. I'd like it back, please. There may be some good words left in that. It was 30 years ago, this very week, believe it or not, that I hired Peter King away from Newsday, the way Tony Kornheiser and a lot of other people left Newsday over the years, to cover pro football for Sports Illustrated. And now today, there is Peter King on the Mount Rushmore of Sports Illustrated writers, alongside the late, great Dan Jenkins, the late, great Frank DeFord, the very much alive Rick Riley. And today, what a great privilege it is for me to see him join them in this Hall of Fame. Today, Peter King, the writer and TV analyst known to Roger Goodell and everyone at NFL Central as relentless and must-read, is the sage of the game, the conscience of the game, the indisputable best reporter of the game that he helped make America's national pastime. You know, sports writers are absolute masters of multitasking, and it's how Peter has always lived his life. Reporter, writer, TV analyst, radio talk show guest, husband, father, coach of his daughter's softball teams, beer taster, coffee expert, airline critic, and friend. Peter is the friend who, after longtime SI colleague Paul Zimmerman, the famous Dr. Z, suffered a series of stroke. It was Peter who organized a benefit in New Jersey that was attended by more than 250 people, including journalists, NFL insiders and outsiders, coaches and players from any NFL team. The benefit for Dr. Z raised more than $150,000. And during the last 10 years of his life, which unfortunately ended last year, Peter was a regular visitor to Paul's bedside. Peter wrote his 8,000-word Monday morning quarterback column for SI for more than 20 years, and it was easily the most widely read story in the magazine for the 40 or more weeks that it appeared. And aside from the annual letters complaining about our swimsuit issue from nuns, mothers, grandmothers, and Mrs. Dean Smith, who hated the issue, and it became a real problem with Dean and me, among a few other people. Anyway, the MMQ generated the most letters from readers, including irate readers who didn't like Peter's take on their beloved team or players, his verbal forays into the political scene, and of course it was Monday Morning Quarterback that had the Twitters going wild all week. But Monday Morning Quarterback was not just about football. It was Peter King playing the role of Andy Rooney that he perfected so well on 60 Minutes. It was Peter King telling 20 million Americans each week what his life is and was all about, and Peter King's life has never been all about football. We anxiously read about his daughter Mary Beth's high school pitching exploits for the Montclair Mounties as they chased the state championship and fell for her when she blew out her elbow. We've read how Peter's tasted, and he says heavily consumed, which I can assure you is the truth, more than 250 different brands of beer during his travels. He says that the Allagash White from Portland, Maine is #1. I've never tasted it, but I won't disagree with him. And yes, we've read perhaps too much about Peter's plane delays and train delays and his time spent on clogged highways. And maybe I may share his feelings for my beloved Red Sox, but most of his NMQ readers never did. But, you know, those things happen. During the season, Peter does about a dozen radio interviews a week, plus his print and TV reports. He takes and makes numerous calls from coaches and general managers and fields questions from strangers on the street. One day a few years ago, Peter called and asked me if I'd come in the city and so we could have a little career conversation. And as we were leaving a restaurant on East 53rd Street, a man stopped Peter and said, Peter, what about my Vikings? Peter stopped and said, yes, sir, let me tell you, I want to give you 4 things about your Vikings that you have to know about them this year. And he did 5 minutes on all things purple with this man he had never met before. I can tell you that that poor guy didn't walk away thinking the Vikings were going to go to the Super Bowl that year. Peter drives fast. He's interested in sandwiches. He does his TV in one take. He knows what he's doing. He walks into a training camp cafeteria and players cheer. And he won't let anything get in the way of his friendship with you. During the last few years at Sports Illustrated, it was Peter regularly volunteering to give back part of his salary, a chunk of his salary, to help save jobs. That was our Peter. As for Peter the reporter, his cell phone currently has more than 1,100 names on the list. He can press a button. If you want to talk to a guy by the name of Steve Kreider, who played for the Bengals back in the 80s, and you may be the only people who might want to do that, Peter does have his number there. In fact, the only person in the broad world of football who refuses to return Peter's phone calls is that wonderful coach of the New England Patriots, Mr. Personality himself, Bill Belichick. These things happen, as Peter would tell you. It was last night, we were at dinner at a restaurant, and Peter was sitting at the end of a table, wearing a bib, simultaneously tasting several appetizers, sampling some Pinot, ordering a filet, taking a call on his iPhone, writing in his notebook, checking the box score from the Red Sox loss to Toronto that afternoon, and keeping up a somewhat heated conversation about the secretive nature of the Patriots. At the other end of the table, Peter's long-suffering of 42 years wife, Ann, was taking this all in when she suddenly said to the rest of us, and people always ask me what it's like to be married to Peter King. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my distinct pleasure and my distinct honor to present Mr. Peter King.
It is heavy.
Ann's really going to hate you now.
It's about as heavy as Dan Jenkins's expense accounts.
Good, thank you. Well, that was ridiculously nice, and only about 36% true. Wow, to be here, I think everybody who has ever come here as a state winner or a national winner, you kind of just take stock of your life and take stock of where you are and who you are. And believe me, this is so great for a little kid from Enfield, Connecticut, who all he ever wanted to do was have a career in journalism. But I really want to thank Mark for coming here and talking about me. He changed my life when he hired me 30 years ago at SI. I really want to thank Dave Gorin. I think that everybody here in this room tonight has had their life changed because of Dave Gorin. Because Dave Gorin invented the National Sports Media Hall of Fame in essence, and the National Sports Media Association out of whole cloth. And I think everybody in here has had some great moments in their life because of Dave Gorin. And Dave, I just want to say thank you. I want to thank my fan club. My sister Pam is here tonight. My two brothers-in-law, Bob and Lou. I've sort of dropped the in-laws title with them because they are my brothers. And obviously my wonderful wife, Ann. What she's put up with me, I can't repay. I'm not quite as obnoxious as what Mark said about me, but I'm pretty obnoxious. And I think she's done a pretty good job in sort of hanging in there over the years. So, Ann, thank you. So, I'm the luckiest person in the room. And I know Tony Kornheiser says he's the luckiest person in the room. Adrian Janowski says he's the luckiest person in the room. I'm sure a lot of people in here believe they are the luckiest person in the room, but I know I am. And I think it's because of the village it took me to get me to this moment in my life. And, you know, the village started with my dad. We grew up in Connecticut. My dad was an iron worker. And every Saturday and Sunday, we'd get up early in the morning, and we lived about halfway between New York and Boston. So we'd get up in the morning, we'd go buy the newspapers, and there we'd go home, and we'd each read 5 newspapers. This was starting in 3rd or 4th grade with me. I was a newspaper junkie early on. And I used to just think to myself, you know, can you imagine, we never really traveled much as a family. We didn't go on any big vacations. I said, I would read the New York Daily News or the Boston Globe and the Hartford Courant, and I would just say to myself, my God, there's guys who get paid to travel all over the place and to write about things. I said, I kind of like writing, you know? I think I'm going to do this. And by the time I was in 5th grade, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I'm just like Tony. Not as good as Tony, but I'm just like Tony in that when you know that you want to do something at such a young age and you can pour yourself into it. In 5th grade, I told my mother, we lived on South Road in Enfield, Connecticut. And I told my mother, I said, Mom, I want to do a little neighborhood newspaper. Would you type it? She was did some secretarial work. And so she would get out her mimeograph paper, and I would write the stories, and she would type them up, and we'd hand them out to our neighbors. And that was me in 5th grade. And there was no question. I feel so bad. A lot of times I go and talk to college kids these days. And I said, you know, I'm the luckiest guy because I knew what I wanted to do when I was in 5th grade. There was no question what I was going to do. And hardly anybody knows what they want to do when they get out of college these days. My 2 daughters really didn't have any idea when they got out of college what they wanted to do. And so I just really have always considered that to be a real blessing in my life, that I knew what I wanted to do and I just chased it. You know, I chased it for a long time. My late brother Ken saw my love of journalism and he says, listen, you're not staying with your high school friends and going to UConn or Central Connecticut or Springfield. You're going away. We're going to find a great journalism school. So I ended up at Ohio University. I'd never been west of Philadelphia in my life until my parents drove me out to Ohio. And that was really an incredible experience. I had 2 interesting mentors there. One of them was a guy named Roger Bennett, who had this great line to me early on when I was at Ohio U. He said, your job is to take people where they can't go and to teach them what they don't know. And it sounds, you know, flaky, cliche, everything, but really, everybody in here, aren't we the representatives of our readers and our viewers? You know, when Doris Burke does a game, I mean, Doris is telling the people at home what they're dying to know about Steph Curry and Kevin Durant. You know, that's why she's there. And that's why she's so good. She tells you the stuff that you can't just get by, you know, listening to the talk shows. And so that, I think, has really been something that I've always had in my head ever since I was at Ohio U. I also had a professor at Ohio University named Drew Everts, who was unbelievable because we had 10 assignments in News Writing 101. In my sophomore year, we had 10 assignments. And if you, in any one of those assignments, if you got one misspelling, you had your tenses wrong one time, or you made a grammatical error in that story, in that 1,000-word story you had to do. If you made any mistake, you didn't get an F, you got a 0. And so now that happens twice, and all of a sudden, you need to get 8 A's to get a good grade in the class. So it just taught me right away, don't let other people clean up your messes. You do it yourself. And respect your editors. And so I've always really tried to do that as a writer. And, you know, I think what happens a lot of times in sports writing is that over the years, we've been writing on deadline. And a lot of times, something stupid will sneak in there and it'll get caught by an editor. But if you've got time, don't make them do that. You know, I've always felt strongly, because later in my career, I've been an editor also. For the last 5 years, I was at SI. And it used to drive me out of my mind when some of the writers would turn in this copy that was just sloppy. Anyway, I'm digressing. But, you know, really, you gotta be an adult about this. You know, you gotta be responsible. There's 2 other people who I'd really like to mention. And one of them is Paul Brown. And so when I was a kid, I got the Bengals job at the Cincinnati Enquirer in 1984. It was first year I ever covered the NFL. And every day in 1984, the Bengals trained at Wilmington College. In those pre-health concern days, players would practice in full pads at from 9 to 11 in the morning and from 3 to 5 in the afternoon. And if you've ever been to Wilmington, Ohio, or any place in central Ohio in July and August, it's not really very nice at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's about 92 degrees with 93% humidity, and that's on a good day. So anyway, I'd be out there, and almost every practice I would watch with Paul Brown. He was the owner of the team, legendary coach, and it was unbelievable. My biggest regret in this job is that I didn't take notes on what Paul Brown told me. But I stood there with him 2 hours every day at least, just watching practice with him and having him explain the game to me. You know, to now hear after, you know, that was 35 years ago, and to now hear Mark Mulvoy talk about me like he did, and, you know, the Mount Rushmore stuff, I mean, I'm just in awe. I'm a babbling idiot. And, you know, getting hired by Sports Illustrated in the first place, I mean, listen, let's be real. My best sentence is not as good as Frank DeFord's worst sentence. But I made it. Once Mark brought me in the door, you were not getting me out unless federal troops came in. I mean, I was not leaving. I was going to prove that I belonged, and I worked every day to prove that I belonged there. And I think sometimes if you look at where you are as a writer, as a broadcaster, and you say, man, I'm not as good as Ian Eagle, or I'm not as good, I don't break stories like Woj, or I don't turn a phrase like Tony Kornheiser. Who cares? What do you do? What do you do well? You know, Mike Shanahan once told me a story when I was coaching girls softball. He said to me, hey, how's your team this year? I said, we suck. And, you know, I mean, that's terrible. The girls are 9. But it's a travel team, and he knew that I was coaching, and I was really into it. I was very nerdy about it. And I said, oh, we're terrible. And he goes, what's the matter? He goes, 8 of our 9 starters from last year are gone. And every single kid, we don't have a kid who's 10 on the team, and it was a 10 and under team. They're all like underage. And he goes, do you have 3 kids who can catch the ball? And I said, yes. And he goes, where do you have them playing? And I told him, he says, no. He said, put them at first, short, and third. And he said, how are they as hitters? And I said, they're terrible. He said, okay, can you bunt in your league? I said, yes. And so he said, you've got to get them bunting. He said, everybody can do something. So teach them how to do it. And so we actually had a pretty good year. I mean, we were maybe 500-ish, but it was a great lesson to learn that honestly, a lot of times, you know, you don't think necessarily that you're going to be good enough, you know, to be as good as the great people in your business. But I can tell you, there are things you can do, and there are things that only you can do. And I just know that over the years, you know, some of the things that I've done, I didn't write as well as Riley any day of any week. And I didn't write as well as a lot of people did, but I knew I reported the hell out of a bunch of stories. Sort of the last thing I would say is that, you know, I think everybody here who does this job and who works really, really hard has a family that sacrifices for them every day. And I'll never forget, I was covering the New York Giants for Newsday, and they were at the Super Bowl the year they played Denver after the 1986 season. And I don't know what it was, but every year in January and early February, I'd go cover the playoffs, and every time I would call home, there'd be a blizzard. And my wife would be sitting there, and yeah, we got the 2 kids here, and we got the blizzard, and I got to find some way to clear out 13 inches of snow out of the driveway. And I'd be, at the time, I remember one time, I was at the Westin South Coast Plaza in Costa Mesa, California, and it was about 82 degrees outside. And she said, how is it there? I said, it's all right. And so I was never a weather gloater, you know. But this one time I called her and she said, okay, we had a long driveway. This is in Lincoln Park, New Jersey. Okay, we had a long driveway. And so Laura, our older daughter, who at the time was about 4, and our younger daughter, Mary Beth, who was maybe 1.5, Ann said, okay, Laura, I'm going to sit you in the window here, all right? And in the picture window, and I'm going to put Mary Beth down for her nap. We have got to clear the driveway because we got to go out and get some groceries. And so she, luckily for the next hour and a half, she shovels like the Tasmanian devil and gets the driveway clear. And, you know, I just telling that story, and luckily both kids were still alive when she went inside. But telling that story, it just makes me understand how incredibly, not how incredibly wonderful Ann is and how great she has been to me, but I look out at all the families here and all the people who have won here. And you know what? Nobody has anybody as good as Ann out here, but you all have people who are pretty darn good. And so I just hope that all of us, because I know I am, I owe so much to Ann, and I owe so much to my family, and I'm so incredibly grateful that over the years, on all my forays out into weirdness, just like Woj said before, believe me, we are totally maladjusted people. I just appreciate how great Ann has been to me over the years. Anyway, love you, and thank you very much. Listen, thank you. Thanks for voting for me. I mean, that was really nice of everybody who put me in the Hall of Fame. Now, you know, it's the old Bill Parcells thing. They can never take this away from you. So anyway, I'm grateful. Thanks so much, everybody.
Congratulations to Peter. We ask now that all our state sportscasters of the year, once again, the alphabetical order, please. And we're going to welcome back our friend Doug Logan as well to introduce these gentlemen and young ladies.
Will Hall of Fame sportscaster Bob Lee please join me on stage to help with our presentation? While the sportscasters are getting organized, a lot of folks enjoy receiving a round of applause tonight, but I'd like to offer one up for our outstanding Master of Ceremonies. How about a round of applause for Wes Durham? All right, here we go. Introducing our NSMA State Sportscasters of the Year. Starting with Alabama, 3 years serving as a sideline reporter for ESPN and the SEC Network for college football and gymnastics. She also covers all sports in the state for AL.com. Second win, Lauren Sisler. From Arizona, 15 years with the Arizona State University Radio Network. In addition to his duties as play-by-play voice of the Sun Devils women's basketball, he hosts pre- and post-game shows for ASU football. Second honor, Jeff Munn. From Connecticut, 30 years at Fox 61 in Hartford. He covers the Travelers Golf Championship, the Connecticut Open in tennis, UConn men's and women's basketball, as well as Quinnipiac hockey. Ninth honor for Rich Capola. From Delaware, the play-by-play voice of the CAA Football Game of the Week on Fox College Sports. He also calls the games for the Wilmington Blue Rocks and Delaware women's basketball. Third win for Matt Janis. From Florida, proud original member of the Miami Heat organization since 1988. He just completed his 31st season as the Heat broadcaster and his 28th as television play-by-play voice of the team on Fox Sports Sun. Second honor for Eric Reid. From Georgia, the voice of the Atlanta Hawks for 34 seasons. His current streak of consecutive Hawks games called stands at 2,581. Third win for Steve Holman. Also from Georgia, sports director at WSB TV in Atlanta since 2008. In 2018, he covered the Bulldogs' historic win at the Rose Bowl and their overtime loss to Alabama in the national championship game. He also covered Chipper Jones to the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. First trip to Winston-Salem for Zach Klein. From Indiana, the 46-year voice of the Indiana Hoosiers. He was honored last year with the prestigious Woody Durham Voice of College Sports Award, his 26th state win, Don Fisher. From Iowa, 23 years at WHO TV in Des Moines. He anchors nightly sportscasts, a daily radio show, and a weekly sound-off program. Fourth honor for Keith Murphy. Out of Kansas, the 17-year voice of the Kansas State Wildcats. He called his 20th bowl game and the Cats' basketball run to the Elite Eight. Fourth win for Wyatt Thompson. From Kentucky, 11 years with WHAS 11 in Louisville. He covered Justify's run to the Triple Crown and the overhaul of the Louisville Cardinals program. Second honor, Kent Spencer. Also from Kentucky, sports director at WAVE 3 News in Louisville. He hosts Inside the Cards coaches shows. He's covered the Olympics, the Final Four, and was honored for his work at the Kentucky Derby. Second win for Kent Taylor. Out of Louisiana, a 28-year veteran with WGNO-TV in New Orleans. He followed the Saints' march to the NFC Championship game and LSU's victory in the New Year's Day Bowl, as well as hosting an award-winning high school football show. Second honor for Edie Daniels. From Maine, sports anchor at News Center Maine in Portland. She covers everything from high school sports to the Super Bowl and the World Series. The first woman from the state to be voted Sportscaster of the Year. Her first trip to Winston-Salem, Jessica Gagne. From Montana, 3 years with the Montana Grizzly Radio Network. He covered the Grizzlies' return to the NCAA basketball tournament and a sold-out season-opening home field victory over Northern Iowa. First win, Riley Corcoran. From Nebraska, 6 years co-hosting a morning show on KOZN Radio in Omaha. He reported on the Cornhuskers' coaching change in their 4-8 season. Another first-time honoree, Gary Sharp. From Nevada, 14 years with KVVU TV, Fox 5 in Las Vegas. He followed the Golden Knights to the Stanley Cup Finals and the Oakland Raiders as they prepare to move to the Strip. First honor for Kevin Bollinger. From New Hampshire, 2 seasons as color commentator for Wildcats football. He also calls various sports for Dartmouth, St. Anselm's, and the University of New England. He's also the state's premier voice for roller derby. First-time winner, Justin McIsaac. From New Jersey, 13 seasons as radio play-by-play voice of the New Jersey Devils, calling their run to the playoffs behind the sterling play of the franchise's first ever MVP, Taylor Hall. Second honor for Matt Laughlin. From New Mexico, the 39-year voice of the Aggies for football and basketball. He called New Mexico State's outstanding basketball season and berth in the NCAA tournament. Fourth win for Jack Nixon. From New York, the 25-year voice of the Nets. He also works the NFL and NCAA tournaments for CBS, NBA playoffs for TNT, French Open for the Tennis Channel, and Thursday Night Football for Westwood One. 17 years with the Yes Network. Fourth honor, Ian Eagle. From North Dakota, 21 years with KFGO Radio, sports director and play-by-play voice for the Fargo-Moorhead Baseball Redhawks, as well as the Fighting Hawks football and high school sports. First-time honored, Jack Michaels. From Ohio, the radio voice of the Cincinnati Reds since 1974. This past January, he announced his intention to retire at the conclusion of the season. He won this award 4 times in Virginia, now 16 times in Ohio. Marty Broder. From Oklahoma, 12 years with KOKI-TV, Fox 23 News. He covers all levels of sports from high school to the pros. He followed the Sooners to the college football playoff at the Orange Bowl. First honor, Nathan Thompson. From Pennsylvania, 25 years with NBC Sports Philadelphia. He's the television play-by-play voice of the storied Philadelphia 76ers. Second win for Mark Zumoff. From Rhode Island, 5 years with WABC 6, the last 2 as sports director. He covered the Providence Friars and URI Rams to the NCAA tournament, the Celtics to the NBA playoffs, and the Red Sox historic run to a World Series title. Second visit to Winston-Salem, Nick Coit. From South Carolina, 31 years with WIS-TV in Columbia. His Friday schedule features high school football, while he spends his Saturdays reporting on the Gamecocks or the Clemson Tigers. Second win for Rick Henry. From Tennessee, an Emmy Award-winning broadcaster who was a 2-time academic All-American volleyball player at Auburn. She co-hosts an afternoon talk show, provides play-by-play of college volleyball and basketball on ESPN and the SEC Network. First win for Dawn Davenport. Also from Tennessee, the voice of the Nashville Predators since they began play in 1998. He called the action of the 17-18 Preds as they won the President's Trophy with the best record in the NHL. Sixth honor for Pete Weber. From Vermont, 20 years at WCAX-TV in Burlington. He leads the only media outlet to cover every high school state championship game, more than 60 individual events. Second win for Mike McCune. From Virginia, 8 years working for the Virginia Tech Athletics and Learfield IMG College. He calls play-by-play on radio and TV for Hokies basketball and baseball. His first honor, Andrew Allegretta. From Washington, 13 years as the voice of the Seattle Mariners on Root Sports and 710 ESPN. He called all the excitement of last year's 89-win season. First victory here, Dave Sims. From West Virginia, he just completed his 22nd season as the voice of the Mountaineers for football and basketball. He's logged 31 years on the Mountaineer Sports Network. Fourth win for Tony Caridi. Also from West Virginia, 23 seasons as play-by-play voice of the Marshall Thundering Herd in football, hoops, and baseball. He was behind the mic as the Herd defeated South Florida for their 6th straight bowl victory, the longest active streak in the nation. 13th honor for Steve Cotton. From Wisconsin, 31 years doing play-by-play of Badgers basketball and 25 for football, which won the Pinstripe Bowl behind Doak Walker Award winner Jonathan Taylor. He also works extensively with the Milwaukee Brewers. 9th honor for Matt LePay. And from Wyoming, 4 years as sports director for the Wind River Radio Network in Riverton. He and his Pokes Preview Show have won 9 Wyoming Association of Broadcasters Awards in the last 6 years. First trip to Winston-Salem, Eric Pauley. Ladies and gentlemen, how about one more big round of applause for our state sportscasters and sports writers of the year and all of tonight's honorees. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Appreciate it as always. Let's move on to the National Sportscaster of the Year. And tonight, we walk into history. Please welcome, from ESPN, Doris Burke.
Congratulations to all of tonight's honorees. It is so wonderful to be here with all of you. A special congratulations to the NSMA 2019 Hall of Fame inductees. Each and every one of you have set such an extraordinary standard. And I think one of the rarest things in life is sustained excellence. And all of you Hall of Fame honorees are inspirational to me, so my thanks. To the NSMA board, thank you so much. To the volunteers, anyone who's ever been involved with this kind of event knows the time-consuming and at times tedious nature, and so we appreciate your generosity in time and effort. Thank you. It is especially significant to me that I am here being honored with some of my colleagues and ESPN family members. Adrian and Bob and Tony. These men are the absolute best of the best, and I have such extraordinary respect for all three of them, so I'm completely humbled to be in their company tonight. Since 1991, I have worked at ESPN, and it has been my incredible good fortune, as you can see, the company I keep, to work alongside the very best of the best. Talented, passionate, hardworking people who pour their heart and soul into the stories we try to capture and do justice to. And it's easy to recognize a Woj bomb or to hear Tony be a part of the best 30 minutes of television every single day. An elite and principled broadcaster like Bob Lee. Those men are easy to see. But there are so many people here with us tonight that you never see. and they are the backbone and the magic of television, and they are standing here with me. That is research people, graphics, tape, camera. Think of your most memorable moments watching sports. It is the best of the best in cameramen capturing those moments. I could list so many individuals behind the scenes, my bosses who have had the intrepid spirit to put a woman in places that, till this point, they have not gone. It takes everyone to change the world. Woj mentioned it. We need more diversity. I am very fortunate to work for bosses who had the kind of intrepid spirit necessary to make that change. To the Jim Nance nominees and the winner Drew, the nature of our business is that not everyone will like you. You can walk into a room and hear a discussion between two people with opinions 180 degrees from one another. It's just the nature of it. One person's style appeals to you and others doesn't. But I've always believed there are two important evaluators of what we do. The assignments your bosses give you, and the second one, which I've always valued beyond measure, and which moved me in accepting this award, and that is the opinion of my peers. So the fact that you voted me this award is truly moving. And then finally, Woj, you were eloquent in documenting the challenges fundamental to the nature of what we do. My children did not ask to make the sacrifices they made. They did not have the luxury of a mom who was home every night. But the most important thing I've ever done is raise two kind and caring children. Sarah and Matthew, I love you both. Thank you.
Thank you, Doris. Congratulations. The 113th member of the NSMA Hall of Fame is Bob Lee of ESPN. Tonight, he'll be presented for induction by longtime friend and former ESPN colleague Don Baroni.
I have to take a moment here because I'm crying because of what she just said. Also, there was a family who came up here, a sports writer, I think it was, family their father died, 3 people. I just want to say, so sorry for your loss, and how all of us will have you in our prayers for tonight. Thank you. Bob Lee and I worked for 15 years doing the investigative crime stuff at ESPN. I have no notes about this because I have 14 messages from ESPN on my phone of what I can't say. Wonderful. I am still scanning the crowd to see if Norby is still here. If Norby has left, I can tell some stuff. Okay. Bob is going to get up here. One of the first things he's going to say, he might say, and I'm just going to jump to it so he doesn't embarrass me, is that we were somewhere in Arkansas, and he went up to a door, and somebody may or may not have a shotgun there. And he keeps telling me, always, you and the cameraman were standing behind the car, and I was at the door. And John Walshwood always told me, whatever happens, get the video. That's why we were there. So I'm going to just tell a quick story about a car trip with Bob Lee, okay? I can't mention what it was about. I can say, I think, where it went. I have my phone on airplane so that Norby, if he is somewhere and listening, will not interrupt. We leave ESPN and fly to Dallas, Texas. From there, we have to go to Wichita Falls, right, to talk to somebody about something. Then we have to, so we do that, and I don't know if it was the person lying to us or the person telling us the truth. So we leave there and we go to Lubbock, okay, to talk about something. And I failed geography, okay? So I set this up. So we drive from Dallas to Wichita, and then we have to drive to Lubbock. So from Dallas to Wichita, you go like up here, and it's like no big deal. And then from Wichita to Lubbock, you go down here and way over there. We've been in countries smaller than where we were gonna drive, okay? So I'm driving along very calmly. Bob Lee looks over at me. He says, "Don, you know you're going 100 miles an hour." Okay. Yeah, right? So, well, I'm going 100 miles an hour because number one, it's a rental car, and that's all the fun I get anymore. We can go 100 in a rental car. And Norby yells at me about that all the time. And the second thing I tell him is this. I say, if we are ever going to be abducted by aliens and UFOs, it is going to happen out here, okay? We have driven for 2.5 hours. There are no stoplights. There are no stop signs. There's no crosswalks. I haven't seen a house, okay? So he's sitting over here, right? And I say, watch out for the UFOs and aliens. And this is Bob Lee. Talent. They look up in the sky for aliens. Okay? I'm driving along. Bob's over here. Every once in a while, I look. He's looking. I'm driving 100 miles an hour. I see cows. They're over the fence. They're looking at us, okay? No people, no homes, nothing. There's chickens walking down the road at 100 miles an hour, right? Bob's just looking. I look over and I look back. There's a goat on the side of the road. I don't know what goats are for. I don't know what goats are do. I only hope goats can go 102 miles an hour across the road because I'm going 100 miles an hour. I look back at Bob, and this is what Bob's doing. Bob is asleep. So I gently move over because there are no lines in the road. We get back over, and there's a goat walking by. So we're driving more. Bob is starting to wake up. Every once in a while, he looks in the sky. We are so far safe from aliens. I look back. Now, this is the part where if Norby was here, I wouldn't talk about. I look back, and there's a basketball in the road. Okay? Bob doesn't see this. Bob is asleep. As I get closer to the basketball in the road, with the lights on, the basketball grows legs. The basketball grows a tail, and the basketball looks at me in the face. It's like one of those prehistoric armadillo things, right? So before that, I'm thinking, if it's a basketball, I can punt this thing at 100 miles an hour to Oklahoma, and Norby won't yell at me because I know he did it once too. But this is an armadillo in the road. So I move it over like this, right? We're safe. I drive a couple more feet, and I'm going to stand back when I say this, because I then say, what are we doing this for? Because I don't know what we're doing. I tell him, I have just driven 100 miles an hour through a zoo, and we're going to Lubbock. I don't know what Lubbock is. I don't know where Lubbock is, and I'm hoping there's any, and I guess it was a statue. There's a statue there. Buddy Holly. Buddy Holly knew where Lubbock was. So I get there, and I'm freaking out. I want to quit. I've probably called John Walsh 4 times already. So I say to Bob, what are we doing this for? And he says, and I wrote it down, he says, for substance. Okay? We are 3 weeks bought by Disney. I'm thinking, oh my God, dude, you can't talk about substance. We're with Disney from now, you know? And that and the fact that of the two of us in this car, which one is Disney gonna pull into the bathroom to pee in the jar? Not gonna be him. And I wasn't warned about it. So I look at him and I say this, Bob Lee, what kind of substance? Which in itself is a Hall of Fame question. And he says to me, and I wrote it down, you know, dude, meaning. And that moment of all of years together explains Bob Lee. Because Bob Lee is about the meaning of it. He is not about all the how of everything you do. He's about the why. He's about telling the story of the game. He's about telling all of you that there is more to this than stats. I was laying in bed the other day, somebody hit a home run, and some red thing followed it, and it was like numbers, and it's like, oh my God, I got no math to do this. Bob Lee is the one who is going to sit there and explain and talk to people. And Bob Lee is the one who, when you knock on the door, shotguns aside, with the NBA and all these other people, they're the ones that he's going to talk to, that he's going to get the answer to, and we all need to do that. I mean, the highlights are great, all the quick little highlights, but some of us who have deja vu issues, they're tough. Bob Lee gets to the point. Come on up here, Bob.
True story. And it got better because the next day we did our business in Lubbock, and then the day after, we think we became the only human beings to ever be in Lubbock, Texas, and Starkville, Mississippi on the same day. If you can contradict this, let us know. Don, by the way, is a notary public as well. And so when the Brian Williams credibility things came up, I sent you a note. You remember this. I said, you know, that thing on the back road in Arkansas, that gun was pointed at me. We don't know if it was loaded, but it really did happen. He sent it back to me. He took his notary stamp, he stamped it, signed it, and he says, I attest this bleep is true. True story. What an incredible assemblage of talent here tonight. It is humbling to be in the company of everyone tonight. To the NSMA and to the city of Winston-Salem, my thanks from all of us that came down from Connecticut. You have made us feel so welcome. This is an incredible event. When Dave Gorin called me in January, I was absolutely flabbergasted and honored. Then I said, well, I got to learn a little bit more. I know about the hall, but I really need to know about the hall. So I go online, and that's when I'm floored, because I'm a student of history. So you can go to their website, and you literally can scroll with your fingers who's in the Hall of Fame. And it's in reverse chronological order, the most recent. And you start with all of these names of the men and women whose work I hold in the highest esteem. You take your finger down your touchpad a little further, and now you're down to the legends, the titans in our profession. I get down to Red Barber, who I grew up watching during the Yankee games on Channel 11 in New York, who I had a short phone conversation with in 1991, the night that Leo DeRocher died. And I got to the old redhead, and I was just blown away. And then to learn that I would be entering this hall in company with Doc, Peter, and Tony, three gentlemen who are excellence personified. I really can't imagine anything greater. It was 40 years ago this coming summer that Scotty Connell and Chet Simmons offered me a job at ESPN. It was exactly 2 weeks to the day before ESPN signed on. And Scotty had watched my tapes, he'd interviewed me, he's walking me to the door in Plainville, Connecticut, offering me the job. I'm 24, yeah. Well, what I said to him, and I could feel him stiffen and stop short. I said, but Mr. Connell, I'm gonna have to get back to you. I have another job interview tomorrow. And I did. And the next day I had another job offer. And that left me with 18 hours to make up my mind. Back in the summer of '79, this was not an easy decision. ESPN wasn't even on the air yet. But I was coming from a position in local cable where I had literally been hired for that job over the blueprints of the remote van that we would use to televise all our events. And here was another chance to get in quite literally on the ground floor. Now, the day before I drove to Connecticut to start the job, I did my last gig in Jersey. That 1979 season, I was the public address announcer for the Cosmos at Giant Stadium. Here I am, all of 24, announcing to nearly 80,000 people every match, introducing Franz Beckenbauer, Carlos Alberto, the return of the recently retired Pele. Senor would come back quite often. And because the Cosmos were owned by Warner, every night, like clockwork, just before the teams came out, I also had the honor of introducing Bugs Bunny. True story. It was an early lesson that this career path would be astonishingly intriguing. Across 40 years at ESPN, I have had the privilege of being part of an American story like no other. And I still remember the very first time. It was at the 1980 Final Four at Market Square Arena in Indianapolis, the open practice day on Friday. And we're down on the floor, David Shepard, my producer, Jeff Israel, the cameraman, and myself, trying to figure out what the heck we're doing. And some people upstairs had seen the logo that was on Jeff's camera, and they called down to us. And we called them down to the railing. We started talking to them. They made it clear they watched what we were doing, and they knew what we were doing. And I thought to myself, wow, this thing just might work. And from that day forward to this day, when folks have been kind enough to stop me, and this has happened literally everywhere on the planet, it feels much the same. And I do take it as a compliment and an affirmation of what all of us continue to achieve in the company and our many platforms every single day. You know, I flipped through the pages of my memory, and there are so many images and experiences. Those very earliest sports centers in the first weeks and months of 1979. We didn't know when we were going on the air because we had to get the tape run sheet. We came on after a tape show, and there'd be a guy there trying to do the math to figure out when we would go on. And then working through the 1980s as this program became a national cultural institution. Taking Outside the Lines, an episodic program that was birthed by the fertile minds of John Walsh and Steve Anderson, and developing that through the following decades to the point it remains now an established daily program. And I believe we have provoked thought through the years and made a tangible difference on a number of issues. And following the fortunes of international soccer across the globe, there is no better way to see the world. What moments I can pull from those memories. It's been mentioned this evening, the privilege of interviewing 4 United States presidents, including President Bush 41 aboard Air Force One. Standing on the touchline of a soccer pitch in Ho Chi Minh City, Saigon, Vietnam, watching the national club champions of Vietnam play a professional team from San Francisco. And that evening marked the first time since the fall of Saigon that the U.S. flag had been displayed in the nation. We were covering Russia's brand new independent Olympic events after the dissolution of the Soviet Union. And I'm walking down the street one afternoon in Moscow. I turned the corner near the Arbat, the market there, and I'm quite literally, along with my producer, we are swept up into a peaceful political demonstration. They were veterans demonstrating their support for the re-election of the president, Boris Yeltsin. And the looks on those people's faces, some of them men in their 60s and 70s, if not older, getting their first taste of democracy that'll stay with you a long time. I've had my live report from Havana, Cuba, interrupted by pro-democracy protesters who were then in turn beaten and arrested by plainclothes police, but we got it all on camera and aired it. I've walked through Soweto, outside Johannesburg, and heard the first-hand accounts of a survivor of an anti-apartheid massacre back in the 1970s. I've had the opportunity and really the great chance to stand at floor level of two of the greatest structures in sports in the world and look up at them. Estadio Azteca in Mexico City and the Maracanã in Rio de Janeiro. Buildings that are so big and so immense they defy description. In the indescribable grief of Newtown, Connecticut, just 3 weeks after the horror on that town, I spent an evening there with no media present, facilitating conversations between the kids of Newtown and their soccer heroes who flew in on their own dime that night from across the country. You kind of wish you could have done more. I've been 5 rows from the top of Candlestick Park in 1989 when a 7.0 earthquake hit the World Series. And what kind of colleagues do I work with? Within 15 minutes, they had us on the air with the first live national reports. And before beginning an interview in Cape Town with a Nobel Peace Prize winner, he asked me, would you mind, before we started the interview, if I offered a brief, non-denominational prayer? And who was I to say no to Archbishop Desmond Tutu? Now, clearly, I stand here tonight on many shoulders. I truly believe, as you recognize me, you honor them. My many colleagues, from the executive suite to the studio, to the newsroom, to the production trucks, you all know who you are. My thanks. My teachers, ranging from Demarest School in Bloomfield, New Jersey, to my professors at Seton Hall University, where I'm privileged to remain very much involved. My parents imparted the values to me that have guided my life. Mom's great belief in the power of education, and Dad's example of the virtues and the rewards of honesty and hard work. Dad, I hope they got that streaming video thing working for you on the iPad tonight. My siblings, I'm the oldest of 5, and we remain a contentious gang of 5, but we're still very tight, especially when it matters. My greatest blessings are my daughters, Alex and Sam, my son-in-law, Matt, my most glorious granddaughters, Ellie and Rowan, and my best friend, who I met 41 years ago, my wife, Barbara. I am honored to stand here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Congratulations. Congratulations to all of our winners. Before the traditional presentation of the Louisville Slugger, Doc will be in the Pirates batting practice tomorrow, I think. We have a couple of notes. If you bid on a silent auction tonight out on the concourse, please check the silent auction bids on your way out. If you are a state winner or a national winner and you would like to pack your award in its original box, we do promise that you will get it through TSA. Please see one of the volunteers at the front of the stage when we are done. For those scheduled for shuttle rides to the Greensboro, High Point, Winston-Salem Triad International Airport, no, that's what it's called. Departure list is posted on tables in the lobby at the Marriott. Please check it and be ready on time. And we remind those of you, it says here after party. I prefer to think of it as the greatest post-game show in all of sports because we take no damn calls. That is at the Butcher and Bull in the lobby of the Winston-Salem Marriott, which has been one of our gracious hosts here tonight. Now, Executive Director Dave Gorin, fresh off his win as Best Dressed, will join me on stage tonight for the traditional presentation of the Hillerick and Bradsby, the Louisville Slugger, engraved, and I'd like to call all 4 of our Hall of Famers and our 2 national winners back up to the stage for the presentation of what has become an NSMA tradition. And we'll get Bob back up as well with Woj and Doris. And you guys get the bats. All right, we're wrapping up these pictures. I feel compelled to tell you that the 61st NSMA will be June 27th through 29th here in Winston-Salem in 2020. And for those of you with more pressing information, the Astros host the Pirates tomorrow at 8:10. Pittsburgh is 36-40 on the year. We will look for Emmerich in the lineup. Great to be with you. Good night and God bless. Thank you all so much for being here.